Hello guys, welcome to Programming Hacks with Rotimi Oladepopo, and this is my JavaScript tutorial. And in this episode we are starting with beginner's introduction to JavaScript part 1, and this is the lesson structure below: introduction, functions of JavaScript, syntax, output to HTML, JS statement, that's JavaScript statements. So now, but before you go on with this course, I will advise you to must have studied my beginner's introduction to HTML part 1 and then my beginner's introduction to JavaScript CSS part 1, because HTML, CSS and JavaScript are the three core languages that makes up front-end development. So they work hand in hand to make up front-end development. However, so let's start with JavaScript introduction. What is JavaScript? JavaScript is the most popular and the most fundamental programming language in the world. Then it is also the core language of web browsers. That is the only programming language that web browsers understand, can read and interpret. Now, the job of JavaScript is to make a website dynamic and interactive. You see, you can develop a website with just HTML and CSS, but the output or the result of such a website is what we know as a static website, meaning that it's a website that we only have text for reading. You can't interact with it at all. But by the time JavaScript now comes into play, the static website will now become dynamic and interactive, which means that you can interact with it, you can make changes to it. Like for instance, now you can register a form, you can register for a program, you can log in, all of that. You can check history and all of that. JavaScript is the programming language that makes it very possible, and we are going to be studying one after the other. So that is the function of JavaScript. Now let's now go into the syntax now. Like I told you, let's go to our VS Code. Let me close this and open our VS Code afresh. So let me minimize and open our VS Code afresh. So now that VS Code has been opened, let me close this welcome message. All of this, if you watch the HTML part 1 tutorial, you are going to understand what is going on here. So let me now open this place. So we have our project file here. This was the project folder that we set up in our HTML. It is here. So we are now going to start with it. Let me open it. So these are project file. Make sure you watch the beginner's introduction to HTML part 1. You will understand this. Now let me minimize this. Let me open that file in our browser. Let me navigate to where the file is. Navigate like this. Navigate. This is website project. This is where it is. This is my website. Then this is the file. This index.html file. Let me right click and open with Chrome. Now this is it, right? Now in our CSS tutorial, I taught us that HTML is just the markup language. Like everything that is visible, all the content, it is HTML that we use to mark it up. Like this heading, this paragraph is made possible with HTML. However, we now use CSS for the styling. For instance, if you want to increase the size of this heading, if you want to change the color, it is CSS that is used, that is cascading style sheet, that is used to do all of that. And I'm going to practice that here now. CSS, just make sure you watch my beginner's introduction to CSS too to understand this. So let me now go to CSS now. So let me try it again. I told you that there are 3 ways you can write CSS and attach it to your HTML, but I only use one method. I said I will be using the other method in our subsequent CSS tutorials. So I'm going to retry it here now as a refresher. You will come to the last line here before this head closing tag, and which is this title. Click after the last greater than sign, tap enter on your keypad so that you can come to an empty line. On this line 7, just come to an empty line. Then type style like this. After typing style, tap enter on your keypad. VS Code is going to pre-format it for you and give you the open tag and the closing style tag. So that is what we have now. Tap enter to make it more readable. Then here I told you that you are going to be selecting. Let me delete this. I'm going to add it later on. You are going to be selecting each of the tags you want to style, for instance, if you want to style this H1 that we have, just come here, let me tap, come here like this, type H1, so we are going to use small letter, type H1. After typing H1, then tap the shift button on your keypad, tap the open curly braces like this. VS Code is going to add the closing curly braces, then tap enter like this. Then after you have done that, if you go back, if you click Ctrl S and go back to your browser, nothing would have happened. You can see that nothing is currently happening. But if you go back to your code like this and type font size, that is, you want to change the size of the font size like this, then you add a colon. Then after you add a colon, give it a unit, give it a size, let's say for instance 70. You will now give it a unit. In this case, I'm going to use px, that which means pixels. Then after that, I'm going to add a semicolon. Remember I told you that we have different types of units in CSS. We have PS for pixels, we have rem, we have em, we have percentage, we have viewports, that's VW, which is view width, we have VH, which is view height. I'm going to be using all of that in our subsequent tutorials. Just make sure that you study and digest this very video, and you know all the beginners courses, so that, because it is going to now give you speed and in-depth understanding, and it will help you to flow better in our subsequent tutorials. Now if you click Ctrl S and save, you now go back to our browser and refresh, you notice that this will become very big. You can see that the heading has become very big. Now you can also change the color. If you want to change the color, you go back to your code like this, then you come to the next line like this, then you type color. The moment you type color, add colon like this, then give it any color of your choice. In my own case, I'm going to give it red. After that, add a semicolon, click Ctrl S to save, go back to your browser, refresh like this. You're going to see that the color is going to change to red. If you want to change it to blue, let's change it to blue. Let's change it to blue. Blue. Click Ctrl S, refresh. You can see that it has turned to blue, but let me change it back to red. I love the red color. Red is my most favorite color, but red signifies style. So refresh like this. You can see that we now have red. Now let's format this paragraph too. Now you now come to the last line of the closing curly braces, tap enter to come to a fresh line, then add P like this, and tap shift on your keypad, then curly braces, tap enter, then give it a font size too. Then in this time let's give it a font size of 30 pixel, like this. Then with a semicolon ending it, click Ctrl S to save, then refresh your browser like this. You can see that it has become very big. Now if you want to change the color, come to your paragraph again, press color like this, then let's give it a purple, add a semicolon like this, refresh your browser. You can see that it has turned to purple. So all this, just go and study the CSS course. You will understand what I did just here. But what the reason why I did this was I want you to notice something. You will notice that all this code we wrote it inside an open style tag and a closing style tag. Now let's now move to JavaScript. Now for JavaScript syntax, to write JavaScript, there are 3 ways you can write JavaScript and attach it to HTML. But I am going to use one method now, and I will use the other method in our subsequent video. So why do you add JavaScript to your HTML file? You will come to your HTML like this. Then you see this last body, this closing tag body, this body with a / inside of it. You will create a space between it and the last HTML tag, like this closing P that you have here. Let's click here like this, then tap it like this. You can see to create a space. Then you are going to now type script like this. Script. When you type script like this, just tap enter. The moment you tap enter, then tap enter again, so that you make it more readable. Now after that, There is a command we have in JavaScript, and that is the first command we are going to be using now. JavaScript is all about commands. You'll be using commands to control your HTML file. So the first command we are going to use is to output our JavaScript code to HTML. Now, the command is called document.get element by ID, like this. That is the command. It's a JavaScript command. Now, it is very, very self-explanatory. It means document, go and get this particular tag with this particular ID for me. Document.get element by ID. Do you understand what I'm saying? By ID. Now, what an element means, like I taught in the HTML tutorial, is that the open any HTML tag with content inside with a closing tag is a complete element. For instance, now this P here plus the content inside plus this closing tag P is a complete element. Now, if you are now getting that element, you have to get it by ID. Now, in HTML there is something we call attributes. Attributes simply means that a feature that differentiates one HTML element from the other one. That is what attribute means. So how do we now give HTML elements attributes? What we usually do is that we'll come into the open tag. We come into the opening tag of any HTML. Opening tag, like let's say for instance this P. Then you click in front of the P before the greater than sign. Then you can see that the cursor is blinking inside of it. Click space like this. Then you give it ID. One of the attributes that we have in HTML is ID. We also have class. We have a number of them, but we'll be using them in our subsequent tutorials. But let's just focus on this ID. ID, after you type this ID, you give it an equal sign and quote like this. But if you are using VS Code, the moment you type equals to sign, the quote is automatically going to pop up like this. You can see that popped up. Let's give it a name. You can give it a name. You can give it your name. In my own case, let me give it Rotimi. You understand my point? So now in HTML, we have an element that has an ID attribute of Rotimi. You understand my point? So now this H1 like this, let's give it an ID too. ID like this. Then type equal sign. Give it any name. Let's say for instance now OB. Let's give obedience. Right? Now, so in this HTML file, we have two elements. We have this H1 element, this heading element, and this paragraph element. We can add more, but this is Rotimi. This is ID obedience. Now, but these two already have content. These are their contents here. Now, let me add another paragraph. This P tag. Once you type it, tap enter like this. Now you can see that currently there is no content in it, right? So this is an empty tag. This is an empty element. There is no content in it. If you click Ctrl S to save and you go to your browser like this to refresh, nothing is going to display. But if I now type something inside like this, like for instance, I love the way my tutor is teaching me web development. Click Ctrl S to save. If you go back to your browser, you will find I love the way my tutor is teaching me web development, right? But if you go back to your code and then delete everything like this and click Ctrl Save, because it will return to an empty tag because there is no content inside it. If you refresh like this, you are not going to find anything inside, right? So now let me now give it an ID too. ID, let me give it empty because it is currently empty. You can give it any name of your choice, just something to differentiate it from the other one. So as it is now, you can see that this is empty. This is a paragraph type which is empty. This is another paragraph type with an ID attribute Rotimi. So this is a paragraph type, this is a paragraph type, but empty is different from rotimi. So this id makes it easy for us, for JavaScript, to differentiate this very element from this element. Now after you have now typed, let's now come to JavaScript. After you have now typed document.getElement by id, you now add parentheses like this. You will now add quotes like this. Let's now give it the name of empty. Now this JavaScript have selected this tag empty. Then you now add dot inner HTML like this. If you are using VS Code, every time you try to type this command, the VS Code is going to bring the complete command for you. So all you just need to do is to select them to make your code writing faster and easier. Now what dot inner HTML means is that now that you have now selected the tag, we have selected this element, this paragraph element, this p element with id empty. You can see that we have selected empty. Dot inner HTML, it means that inside of it, so go inside of it, into the content. Then you write equals to and add, let me type something here, JavaScript. Let me type my JavaScript first code. Then at the end of it, you must add a semicolon, because after adding a semicolon, this is now a complete JavaScript statement. You can see that in our training structure. Let me go to our training structure. I thought about JS statement. Now we are in the output to HTML. We're trying to output to HTML, and I'm already talking about, and then the next one is JS statements. So now this is a complete JavaScript statement. We have other type of statement that we are going to be checking later on. So now you see, so here now you have selected, because this is an empty tag, but you have now selected this empty tag using this JavaScript command, document.getElement by id empty dot inner HTML. Don't forget this quote inside is equals to my JavaScript first code. What this actually means is that go inside this and add my JavaScript first code. Now if you click Ctrl S to save and you go back to your browser and refresh like this, you are going to find my JavaScript first code here. You can see, so we use JavaScript to output to HTML. That is number one. Number two, let's change it. Let's delete everything like this. Let's type I love JavaScript. And we see like this. Then I love JavaScript. It means that go into this element tag that we selected, document.getElement by id empty dot inner HTML. Inside of it, inside the HTML, inside its content, add I love JavaScript. If you click Ctrl S to save and you go to your browser to refresh, you are going to find I love JavaScript. Do you see? Now you can also do calculations with it, because it is JavaScript is a programming language that you can use. So now we can also program calculations, arithmetics into it. So let's now do that. But before we do that, I want to now make you understand something. You know, I told you that it is this id attribute that differentiates it from this id attribute. Now this rotimi element already has contents. You can see my first website tutorial. If you go back like this and refresh, you are going to see that this is the content here. But now if you want to change the content, you can use JavaScript to also change the content. All you need to just do is to come to this attribute here. You know that what we selected is empty, and select this tag. Let's type rotimi there. Now we are not selecting empty again. We are now selecting rotimi, right? Rotimi is what we are now selecting. If you click Ctrl S to save and you go back to your browser and you click refresh, you are going to now see that what we will have is I love JavaScript in this tag, in this element that has the id rotimi as attribute. Do you understand my point? So JavaScript, when you use this command document.getElement by id, this attribute makes JavaScript understand which tag to reference. That is why we have attributes. Now let's now do something again. Let's say for instance I want to select this obedient instead. Let me delete this root email like this and select obedient. Obedient like this. Click Ctrl S to save. Go back to our browser. Currently what we have as heading here is my first website tutorial lesson, but refresh now. You are going to see that what we have is I love JavaScript. You can see. So we use this command to select each of the tags that we have and then add a content to it. So now I'm going to return it now and use empty instead. Empty. I'm going to click Ctrl S to save, then go back and refresh. So everything is back in order. So this is the empty. Now let's now do some arithmetics with it. Instead of adding a test like this inside it, let's just say we want to do calculations. All you just need to do is, let's say, type 400 like this, anyhow, any figure at all, then use times, add times from your keypad like this, times 2, then add semicolon, click Ctrl S to save, come to your browser, click refresh. What do you have? 800. The calculation will be done for you. You can see the calculation has been done. JavaScript as a programming language has done the calculation, and you are going to see the result here. Now let's do something else. Let's just add 400 alone without the calculation. Click Ctrl S to save, come here and refresh. What do you have? 400. But if you come back to your code and give it space like this and add times and add 3, both of us knows that we should all know that 400 times 3 is going to give us 1200. Click Ctrl S to save, go back to your browser and refresh. We are going to have 1200. You can also do subtraction. Let's do subtraction. Let's delete everything like this. Let's do subtraction. Let's just do 900 minus 250. Add a semicolon to end it. Click Ctrl S to save. Come back to your browser. Refresh. You are going to have 650. Now don't let us subtract. Let us just remove this. Let's leave it at 900 like this. Add a semicolon and refresh like this. You are going to have 900. Can you see? So this is the beauty of JavaScript. So this is how JavaScript is used to do computation on the back end and then output to HTML. So I am going to stop here. So please make sure you practice this very, very well, because this is a foundational course. Then after this we are going to progress to part 2. Do you understand? I have my reasons for making it very short and making it very simple like this, and using simple beginners techniques like this, so that you can be up and running in the shortest time. Because if I use complex or more professional tactics, you may get burnout. You may become burnout and frustrated. So make sure that as simple as this project is, make sure that you are studying them and master them. The next video is going to come out on Thursday, so I'm going to be recording Mondays and Thursdays. So make sure you enjoy yourself. See you on Thursday for the next course. Enjoy yourself. Bye. Later.